Good morning, and thank you for the warm words of welcome. Now it is up to me to try and live up to that. We are here. I was supposed to say something inspiring. That's what Sandhya said. So I've been searching hard for what my inspiration is. And maybe I'll try and put that before you to see if it is worth the journey. Two things. As principals and leaders and managers and administrators in education, we have a hard job because there are so many different agencies involved. There's the government and Ministry of HRD, AICTE, and all those grim things are there, and we have to survive all that. But I think the most difficult part of the survival is surviving ourselves. We have a role to play here where nobody can help us. We have to help ourselves. This is the intellectual part of teaching and education. What do we teach? Why do we teach it? Do we teach it because ACM says so? Do we teach it because IEEE says so? Is the subject some dead matter to be acquired from a book and spat out in the class, covered in the class rather than uncovered in the class? So what are we up to and why? I think that no subject is dead matter. It is our interpretation of the subject that brings it alive for the students. So, since it is not some non-living thing, this is what I learned while in my last years in TCS, that everything is living. And it is living through our minds. It may not be biologically alive, like a subject, may not be biologically alive, but it is living, it is changing, it is evolving because there are researchers, because there are teachers who find it difficult to teach and try to find better explanations and so on. So this is one big part of the problem. Are we teaching because there is a subject? Are we teaching because we love the subject? Are we teaching because we find sense in this subject which can be improved? So this personal involvement in giving the subject life for the students is something that only we can bring to the table, because the students are just recipients at the moment. They are not yet alive in the subject. We want to make them alive in the subject. So this is a very strong and difficult requirement, and for understanding this requirement we must know what is it that we are teaching and why are we teaching it. We teach because the next generation of students are potential academics as well as potential workers in the industry. So that is our requirement, that the students become good academics and good industry people who can manage on their own, who can breathe subjects, who can breathe life into their subjects because of their experience, because of their way of dealing with problems that surround them. So I think that this is a tall order. We have to find our inspiration to try and teach these subjects, because there is value in the way we look at the subjects. And we look at the subjects partly because we have to resolve conflicts in students, and partly because we want to do well ourselves, want to explain things better ourselves. So that is what drives me, that we need to make these subjects as personal to us as possible, so that we are able to inspire others why we like the subject, why we take the trouble to get so confused about it, and how much effort we put in trying to overcome this confusion and explain things better. This is our world, and this is what we have to survive most. And all this part of education which involves interacting with other agencies takes a back seat when we discuss this business of teaching others the subjects that we love. So this is the presumption that we love some subject, and I think we all need to come to terms with some subject that we like most, that we can make our own and make a difference. When I was a graduate student, I came under the influence of several very well-known computing people who started a stream of activity called structured programming. How do we write programs so that we can say why they work? We are confident that they will work, and we are confident that there are no bugs. So this movement started long ago, and I thought it is my lot as a religious person to follow their principles and expound them religiously, just have faith in them. And I went on like this till one day I heard a comment saying that we in the West will do design and China and India will implement it because there are lots of people, right? And I felt very bad because why can't we be designers, And till then I never thought about trying to independently design, but suddenly I found that if you want to, you can design. So we must want to, right? We are providing service today in the IT industry to many, many industries outside India, but we could make products too. And for that, we must want to make a product. We must want to know why this product is worthwhile and unique and interesting enough for us to put our sweat and blood into it. And if we can do that, there's no reason why we can't do the design and why we can't be the implementers. So I think there is nothing lacking in us. My popular way of understanding this is that you cut your finger here and the blood is the same as somebody else who cuts the finger elsewhere, So if you're all made of the same materials, why can't we be independent in our thinking too? And the need of the hour is to be independent for us because it is we who have to determine our future of how we want to do it. We're all desperately growing in engineering colleges in India with the assumption that engineers are employable and better. But employable, maybe they'll be employable, but there must be employment available. So the way the industry is going is that the industry is getting bigger because it is cheaper here. So does that give us any self-respect at all? Is it worthwhile being cheaper or is it worthwhile trying to be better? If we are cheaper, I can guarantee you that Philippines will be cheaper or China will be cheaper and so on. There are many countries that can take the tag from us and offer cheaper services. And if less expensive services is all that matters, then why educate? So we must not be cheaper alone, we must be better. And to give you an industry-like statistic, the industry today earns at best around $40,000 a person, at best, right? So many companies will earn less than that. And good companies in the US earn $200,000 a person. That's a 5-fold increase in the salary. Are they 5 times better than us that they need to be paid? Or is it just jatakam, that they were born in the West and therefore their standard of living is more expensive and therefore they deserve those salaries? What's it to us? Why can't we be earning 5 times more but deliver 5 times better? So that we still have an advantage with us. We have an advantage of being better, not just cheaper. So I think that these are unless we have some goals like this, we cannot change our education, we cannot push our curriculum, we cannot say why we want to focus on quality, why we want to focus on good engineering quality. We cannot do all this. So we must have a purpose. And for me, the simple purpose is, I want to earn 5 times more. And that will not make me useful unless I am also 5 times better. So that the current cost advantage remains for the industry and jobs will continue to be available. Otherwise the jobs will dry up because every year, this year I think they said 11% increase in salaries, right? And as you go on compounding this year after year, we'll all be as expensive as American labor. So there's very little advantage in coming to India. So if we have to preserve that advantage, then education has a responsibility of producing, or not producing, but educating better workforce. And this can only come through better faculty and better interaction with students. I'm sad to say that students these days are hardly motivated. They're born in India, they know Java, therefore they deserve a job. So they not deserve a job, they demand a job from the industry. The industry doesn't have jobs to give, it has to earn. So this attitude of the students that we're doing engineering, therefore we deserve a job is something wrong, and I think we as educationists have to point this out to them strongly enough and say that their parents are paying their fees not because there's some silly job that doesn't require their capability, but because they want to be better citizens. Okay, so I think this is a huge job in front of us, and whenever there is a tough job, we need to find our own set of inspirations that we can cope with and use in order to better ourselves. Having said this, there is another thing that drives me these days, and I'm actually surprised that it didn't happen earlier. For now 50 years or so, the supposedly better educational institutions, the IITs, have engineering education institutions, have thrived on the idea that they have an integrated program. The integrated program consists of science, humanities, and an introduction to all disciplines in engineering before you branch out into your own. Right? And supposedly this has helped build brand India. So we have an accepted undergraduate engineering educational system which thrives on the idea that we follow the fundamentals of science carefully enough in our engineering education, and therefore we are like chameleons. You know, they can go into the software industry and still survive. They can go on to Wall Street and still survive, and so on. I had a classmate who taught Greek poetry and died teaching Greek poetry, not because of Greek poetry. He loved Greek poetry, and he found that out later after doing 2 masters in computing. So here we have a situation that well-educated people can change or define their careers as they go along, and most of us try to survive a career, a job that we have. And the question is, what is the future of engineering education? I say this because having been in computing for so long, it is really sad that computing does not enjoy decent, what shall I say, mental image amongst the engineering departments. The chemical engineers will say, why should we struggle to teach chemical engineering for 4 years, and this person doesn't know anything about programming, but because he has done C or C++ or Java, he takes a job in the industry. What is all our effort going into? And this is sad. And everybody says the industry is at fault. The industry is just saying that we've got jobs, so if you have got people who are capable, we'll take them. Right? So it's not a question of whose fault it is, but are we taking a serious look at what is it that we are educating? Right? Is engineering education only about engineering, only about making the engine? Right? So in the beginning, as a fresh engineer in some engineering industry, you're going on trying to improve the engine, improve the artifact, better engineering design. Right? And this happens long enough and seriously enough till the person is desired to produce the next device, the next engine. Suddenly, in order to produce the next device, engineering is not enough. You have to understand people, their needs. Maybe you need to understand humanities, sociology, psychology of people. What will be attractive to them? So, in some sense, the future of engineering is in the future of engines, and the future of engines is in the requirements of people around. So, assuming that science-based engineering education is the best that we can do is fallacious, because such people are not geared to talk about the next engine. Having said this, the question is, what does this have to do with computer science? When I was a graduate student, we had Professor Kesavan, who was the head of the electrical engineering department at Kanpur. And he was strongly a proponent of systems engineering as an undergraduate core curriculum discipline. Systems engineering, because it is not any particular discipline, it is general and applicable to all. So it should be in the core. But it wasn't accepted by the Senate at IIT, and it didn't become a part of the core curriculum, and he went and started a systems engineering department in Waterloo and Canada. So why didn't it succeed? Why wasn't it taken as a core engineering discipline? And what is core engineering? When I joined TCS R&D, my boss put an equation that he said, I want you to solve this equation so that our training can be good. We employ, let's say, electrical engineers. Can I take electrical engineering and subtract electrical and get an engineer? If I have an engineer, can I add software and get software engineers? So what does it mean to be an engineer, and what does it mean to have software as a part of an engineering discipline is something that wasn't clear 35 years ago, and it's still not clear. Right? It is only in computing departments that we have software engineering as a subject, but not a discipline. No electrical engineering department ever teaches electrical engineering as a subject. So there is something wrong that we are not recognizing the discipline inside, and instead we are treating it as a subject, and that too as a subject which involves large numbers of people trying to program, rather than what is a good program. How does one write good programs? All engineering departments are focused on engineering products. So the software engineering department should be focused on designing good software, right? Not producing good software. That is a different issue. That's an engineering industry issue. So to me, systems engineering is important because it allows us to build larger things from small, complex things from simple. So systems engineering has that character of aggregating, and aggregating either in the dimension of large and small, or aggregating in the dimension of simple versus complex. So it is therefore a useful core discipline because it gives you the general ideas of building things that are more complex or larger than what we may simply do. On the other hand, software engineering has a unique position in the engineering world because it is the engineering of ideas. There is no materials. There is no physics inside software. There is no material property of the world outside which influences the way software works. All these things come from our mind, and in our mind the only thing that we have is mathematics for reasoning, and software, the foundations of software are in mathematics. So can we use this idea that software engineering is all about designing functions? Whatever software you make, it has to function. So do you understand the mathematics that underlies the function? Maybe there is no mathematics that underlies the function. Maybe you want to simulate something. Maybe you want to build up from empirical experience, as is common in engineering. So software engineering caters to the function part of all engineered devices. And systems engineering says, how do we build larger and more complex solutions? So these two, to me, formed actually the core discipline of engineering. Once this is absorbed, if you like electricity and the phenomena around it, or you like chemistry and you like, you can do chemical engineering, metallurgical engineering, depending on what aspect of science or maths you like. But the core engineering disciplines are the systems engineering and software engineering disciplines, because both are just dealing with ideas. Right? Why do these ideas work? How can we engineer these ideas to be efficient, reliable, available, usable? All those different qualities of non-functional qualities in engineering. So if we can see ahead into the next 50 years and say that we would like a curriculum that will help the students survive the next 50 years for their careers, so that we also can survive in teaching them for the next 50 years. Right? If we can see this, then we might have to ask the question, how do we reorganize the curriculum so that it has this long life? What are the foundations that will give it its long life? And I think it is software and systems that give it long life. We haven't really used much of biology in engineering, but maybe we should start, because as I said, all ideas are living ideas because they live because of the people who are having the ideas. Right? Software is a living idea because it changes. My requirement changes and software changes. But I don't know how to talk about evolution of software. I don't know how to talk about evolution of a car. Right? There is a long, complicated numbering sequence for parts and so on. And this part is compatible with that part and is in some model and so on. But we don't have an idea of how the change evolves, how the change comes about. In the same way as how we survive change around us by mutation and so on. We say the DNA of the subject is something, but we don't really understand what the DNA of that subject is. It's a phrase that we like to use. So the DNA of my industry is something, people who are cheap. So that's hardly DNA. Right? Will the people who are inexpensive to pay for always know what is needed? I think that we have very poor understanding of these issues, and this is what always drives a researcher on, to find a better basis. And it is important for all teaching institutions to be engaged in research. Research is not some holy business. It's a puzzle that we find around us in everyday life. Something that doesn't work, and we need to make it work better. To make it work better doesn't require any extraordinary intelligence. It requires just the desire to make it better. And everybody has the intelligence to make it. So research is not necessarily for the IITs and the big universities. It is for all of us. And the more we are engaged in the business of making things better, the better off we are, because we are prepared for a tomorrow which could be different. So I had told Sandhya to shut me up if I talk too much. I think I've come to that point and I shut myself.